What's going on, sports card hobby family? Another day, another sports card video. We have a huge announcement. Frank, are you ready for this? Oh, we can finally talk about it. After months and months of planning, the Sports Card Dad team, we are opening up a card shop in Atlanta, Georgia. And a big reason why we're excited about this, frankly, not a lot of competition among card shops here in beautiful Atlanta, Georgia. I'm actually located in Raleigh, North Carolina area, but we just saw Atlanta as a perfect opportunity to really get into the space, just a lack of overall card shops and exposure to sports cards and collectibles in that area. So we are excited to get started and break ground in Atlanta, Georgia. And also, you know what? We are sick and tired of hearing about all the push, to try to get the younger generation involved in sports cards and the hobby. It's the only thing that anybody wants to talk about. Well, guess what? We're going to go in the opposite direction, and we're going to focus on a different demographic, the forgotten demographic, the elderly. That's right, 70s, 80s, 90s, centennials. You have been completely forgotten in the sports card hobby, and we are going to focus our store around you all. Shuffleboard, bowling leagues. We're going to focus on sales of things like dentures, stuff that regular people care about and that's needed in today's world. We will have shuttles back and forth to nursing homes in the local area. We're excited to get started. You all have been forgotten, but we are here for you, friends. In all serious, big congrats to Jeff Wilson and the SCI team on this new venture. I actually did see the space when I visited Jeff this summer when I was on the It's Jeff Wilson show, and it's going to be something. It's going to be something. There's a lot of kind of cool twists and turns, I think, that'll come with this announcement. And so good luck to the team, and I'm looking forward to visiting. All right, I caught an episode of The Crossover this week, and that is with Josh and Chris Hoge. Friday nights, I believe, is when they typically do this. And they had a very interesting conversation. It's about state of the market, card prices. And the one thing I really liked about it, it was really kind of a no BS look at this. And they were kind of talking about, hey, is anybody making money in sports cards? Now, let's kind of differentiate to what we're talking about. We'll kind of drill down here a little bit. Not necessarily talking about grading companies or manufacturers or sports card stores, that sort of thing, but more talking about the average Joe flipper, or maybe even some of the card show dealers that are not doing it as a full-time business. They're maybe doing it on the side, just kind of doing it for fun, a hobby, extension of the hobby type thing. And what they were really getting at is on their data tool, they have what's called a CL50, and it's looking at the 50 important hobby cards. And it's got a variety of different stuff. It's got modern, ultra modern, and it's got vintage stuff. So it's kind of trying to cover some ground, kind of in the same way that a stock market index would be set up to try to give you an idea as to what the overall market is doing. It's, again, just one data set, so it is what it is. But the one thing that Chris had said is that if you look at where that sits now, that CL50, it's basically in line with where it was 3 years ago. So the point that he was making is all the gains, all the pandemic, the COVID era gains that we saw, the massive rises, they've all been given back to the market. So if you're looking at kind of where we sit now, and again, it's going to vary depending on cards. There are certain cards that are still up from, a year ago, 2 years, 3 years ago, but we're talking about it in a broad sense. Huge shout out to today's video sponsor, DC Sports 87. Maybe you want to sell cards, but man, you don't want to deal with the packaging, the shipping, the possible returns, this and that and the other thing. You can just shoot those off to DC Sports 87. They will run them at auction for you, take care of all the shipping stuff, and it's very easy. 1 business day turnaround from requesting payment. And it's all live on their website as auctions are ending and people are paying. You see it all happening. Very easy process. I actually have cards with them right now. So if you want to give them a shot, it's DC Sports 87. And so I think this really begs the question, is this kind of a nice buying time? I've been open about it. I've been buying Tom Brady type refractors, Drew Brees type stuff. I PC Drew Brees, but just examples. Actually got 2 of the Purple Power Prism numbered out of 75 from 2017, and this is a 2016 Orange Prism that's numbered out of 275, I believe, or 299. But these were cards that, and especially this card right here, these Purple Prisms were in the $1,000 plus range going back in time, not even during the boom. Going back a year, 18 months ago, they were about $1,000. These were right in the $300 range, $350 range each. This is another card that I actually did own. At one time, I had sold it going back in time for about $600 to buy some of the other stuff, and I bought it back here at $200, $211 here recently. And I think there's a lot of cards like this, depending on what player that you're looking into, what sets. I mean, there's so much inventory out there, and if you're collecting a certain player, prices are down. I think the bigger question is just for people that are buying, will they go down further? It's not necessarily, is this a good price point? It's just more of, hey, could it drop a little bit more to where, I don't necessarily want to buy it now if in 6 months it might be a little bit lower. And that's a totally fair assessment. But I just really like kind of where we are right now. It just feels like a really good buying season for a lot of stuff. Now, granted, I know there's going to be certain stuff like the brand new product, the brand new rookie that inevitably is going to see a hit as, they flame out. We've seen this with, NFL QBs this year, but it's every year. You have kind of the big excitement around QBs, and then, there's an injury or they don't pan out. Who are examples of this? Sam Howell, Desmond Ridder, Jeff, and I know the Falcons are actually playing pretty well, but Desmond Ridder, he's not playing badly, and that's actually the sad part here, is Desmond Ridder is not even playing horribly. He's not injured, but you're still seeing a decline. Just simply season starts, people move off of cards. It's just kind of the way the NFL stuff works, but I thought this was an interesting conversation, and Chris and Josh did touch on this, kind of the influx of new product, coming in, just kind of the new, you've got the Wemby stuff, you've got all of these the push for the new stuff, that's coming out, and does that take away from the secondary market for important cards, important players, because there's just money moving around. There's only so much money, and then everyone's kind of spread out a little bit, which has probably always been an issue because people do get excited about new products, so they are spreading their money between like, oh, I'm going to buy Michael Jordan cards, but I also want to buy a box of Bowman Chrome when it comes out or whatever. So people are probably spreading their money around regardless. One thing that we know is, certainly with Fanatics coming in, it's not that they're not going to make mistakes. It's not that there's not going to be quality control problems. But the one thing we know that they will do, is put more eyeballs on this space. They will absolutely put more eyeballs, whether it be through athlete relations. Keep in mind, Fanatics has built this business with the leagues. So it's not even as if like, yes, they're licensed with the leagues, and that's going to happen in a couple of years for NFL, NBA, and all that. But they are in business with them. They're in it together. It's not necessarily like, oh, Fanatics is just kind of like this third tier player out here that's got a license. I mean, they've built a company together around this. They are in bed together to make this work. So you are going to see a lot more buy-in, and we've already seen it from players, Michael Rubin's influence with players, and the leagues will do the same thing. Eventually it will happen. I think we're kind of in the beginning stages, but you've already seen, the fact that you could go meet Wembanyama with this redemption, get a card signed there, and maybe Topps Panini have done something similar to this. I just don't remember this sort of thing happening. The fact that Fanatics has entered the space, and again, the big whale, there's going to be problems, there's going to be issues, the potential monopoly stuff and everything that comes with that. But the one thing we do know, the marketing, the eyeballs, it will happen because they've spent too much money to be in the space for it not to happen. And so we know that part. So if anything, mainstream will know about this space more so than they do today. We don't know how that's going to affect card prices and this sort of thing. But the thing that Chris had mentioned here too in this live stream is he only really sees kind of in the short run and maybe the long run as well for real kind of appreciation on cards to happen is more entrants, more collectors, more speculators, more investors. I'm throwing in that part because you can say collectors, but there's a lot of speculators that come into this space. But we need more of those people, more people playing. When you look at, and this is not the same. I'm going to make an analogy. The stock market is not the same as cards. So let me just differentiate these two things. But why is the stock market so stable? Why is the Dow Jones so stable? It's because there's so many entrants into it. There's so many people that have a 403b, a 401k, they've got an IRA. The financial system has set up retirements around the stock market. So you automatically have people that are putting their money into this thing. And it's not to say that that's going to happen with sports cards. I don't think for my retirement holdings, you know what? I'm going to throw some money into the sports card index. I don't see that happening, at least not anytime soon, but it's a similar idea as just more people have to be involved in it to make it kind of all work. It was a sleepy hobby going back to 5 years, 7 years, 10 years ago, but it's on a different trajectory now. If you're kind of like reading between the lines, feels to be a more mainstream hobby moving forward, even more so, I believe, than what we saw in 1990 and 1991, just given the power of the internet, social media, and the way that you can get information out to people. It was a lot more organic back in 1990. There wasn't the same sort of connective tissue that we have now with social media and the internet, to where you can very easily see where people are, what they're doing, what they're selling. You know, back then it was very closed off. You didn't know what was selling in the next town, let alone on the West Coast. It was impossible. Even with the Beckett price guides, they did their best to kind of gather information, but it's tough. I mean, even Rich Klein was talking on a live stream last night. Rich Klein worked with Dr. Beckett, going around trying to get this information from card show dealers. It's not easy to get that information, and they don't even necessarily want to give it out. Also, it's not as if they're like, oh, you're running a price guide? Well, let me tell you exactly what my sales were. Some of the dealers will let you know that, and others are like, you know what, that's my business. I don't want to share that. I know I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent here, but I think going back to the regular flippers out there, are they making money the same way they were 2 or 3 years ago? Obviously not, which brings, I think, a question mark to everybody here as to how do you want to operate? Because it does feel like if you're more of a buy and hold type person, prices have subsided back down. You have a lot of the folks that got out that were more speculating. There's still a lot of spec money in the space for sure, but if you're if you were looking at important cards and you're like, man, those are way out of my range, well, now you'll find a lot of this stuff has come way, way down to where it's like, okay, maybe these long-term buy and hold things that I was looking at 2 years ago that were like to the moon up here, maybe some of these are actually worth a shot now. So anyway, kind of an interesting conversation. Again, check out that recent episode of The Crossover. And again, big shout out to Jeff Wilson and his team building out the store. I'm sure those guys are going to crush it. It's going to be an interesting follow, and I think it's going to really redefine a card shop experience as we move forward. So we'll see what happens. Stay healthy, stay awesome, and I will talk to you again later.